Today's mission for you and I to try to correct these 2 feet. We've got crossed over toes and we've got imbalances to fix. We need to fix this hoof angle. Welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. Now here we can get a good look at this right front foot. In order to change this foot angle, we're going to need to make a cut basically like this, removing less from the heel and more toward the toe until we get this back into balance. Let's get started. Now, the name of the game here is improving foot angle. And how do we do that? By taking off very little hoof horn toward the heel and taking more off toward the toes as we go. That's going to tip that foot up and increase that foot angle. You can see we've got long toes here. So by removing very little at the heel and more toward the toe, that's going to naturally make that angle more steep. Shortening those toes up, that's going to make that foot, put that foot back into that proper position that we need. When we're talking about balance, we're not necessarily talking about balancing weight. We're talking about balancing those claws out so that the weight is distributed as it should be naturally. Rarely in any case with a cow are those claws going to bear the exact same amount of weight just through the dynamics of locomotion. The way that weight is distributed changes throughout the different periods during that step. So we're not balancing weight. We're just getting that foot balanced back, getting it back in the correct shape and form and function so that it operates as it should on the inside. Hoof angle is going to position the bones, the pedal bones in the foot in the correct angles, which is then going to distribute the weight throughout that foot exactly as it should. You'll notice with this right front, even though these toes were long and this foot was out of position, the hoof horn itself looks really good. It's nice and clean and white throughout, some small cracking toward the white line, but that cleans up nicely. There's really no problems in this foot. It's just the angles need to be adjusted, and that's what we've done now. Remember what those angles look like at the beginning of the video? Well, look at them now. So much better, so much more tipped up, in proper alignment, exactly what we're looking for. Now let's move on to that left front, and this one is going to be a bit more tricky. Once we get this foot up, you'll be able to see that not only are these toes a little bit longer, but we've also got some corkscrew rotation to deal with as well. So we're going to have to make a few extra adjustments with this trim. So when it comes to corkscrew rotation, there's not a lot that goes on with that lateral claw, the outside claw that I'm working on now, as far as that goes. What you tend to see is a little bit more horn growth toward that outside wall edge than you do toward the inside, so we have to bring that down much more than you typically would on a lateral claw on the front foot. Aside from that, though, the trim is basically the same. It's got basically the same shape as it typically would. Here you can see some of that natural shedding that's trying to happen there with that pith layer. That's what would naturally fall away from the foot. Now as we move on to this medial claw, this is where the rotation is, and you'll notice how I trim this. I'm going to remove more material, in fact most of the material, toward the inner part of that foot. You'll notice when I'm done trimming here, up toward the upper right-hand corner of that claw, I haven't touched that at all. That is the exact heel height that it was when I started. Because this claw's got a little bit of rotation in it, we have to adjust the way we trim that to bring that back into balance in the end. If I were to trim this as I would a normal claw, all I'm really doing is reducing the heel height, but I'm not correcting that curvature. So that's why I change that angle, leave some hoof horn on the outside wall there. Haven't touched that at all. Make that taper to follow that slope that's in that claw. And I'm going to make that cut down here. A lot of toe to remove on this one, extra long, but that's going to bring that claw back into balance. Now, one of the questions I get sometimes is when I'm making that toe cut is, you went through the white line there. How do you do that? Well, you're not actually cutting through the white line that's on the inside of the foot, because that sole, in this case, is probably close to 3/8, maybe half of an inch thick. That white line is deceptive in its location. If I were to continue to trim this claw down all the way down to, let's say, a 1/4 inch or less of sole depth, then that white line would then reappear, and it would look like you see in a lot of other trims. But I like to keep that sole thicker because, to me, sole is the protection for the inside of the foot. The thicker that sole, the more rigidity that foot has, and the less impact to the corium from the bottom that sole has. Now, in this case, I'm going to do a little more modeling than I typically do, because in this case, this cow has a natural tendency to want to rotate on that claw. So I want to model that out to make sure that there's no resistance there when this foot hits the ground. Remember that corkscrew rotation before? Well, here it is now, after we've trimmed that. Put this foot down and see how it looks squared up on the floor. You can see, much better now. Got great foot angle here, swing around toward the toe. Remember how it was crossed before? We've got nice alignment. She did have a little DD on one of those back feet, so I wrapped that up, but she is good to go. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and we will see you all on the next one.